just to there's some really big stuff in this film that we want to keep a secret just because this film really is the celebration. We want to keep as much of it back as possible.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. Marvel and Sony just released the new Venom: The Last Dance trailer, revealing Knull, god of symbiotes, would be the main villain of the movie, and he'd be a multiverse villain too. It raised way more questions than it answered. Why is Sony introducing Knull, such a huge Thanos-level villain, in what's supposed to be the final Venom movie? Like, where are they gonna go with this character? They can't kill him off in a single movie. He's way too big for that. Sony, please don't go full Sony on this villain. Recently, it was reported it's all because of Sony and Marvel's changes to their plans for Spider-Man 4 with Tom Holland inside the MCU, connecting the Knull storyline to Spider-Man's storyline. The real big change behind the scenes, apparently, is that Spider-Man 4 would be another Avengers-level multiverse event in the vein of Spider-Man No Way Home, like going bigger than that. So we'll break it all down. It's a huge surprise. I think we all expected them to actually go back to basics, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man street-level style. But if they are going bigger and turning this into a bigger multiverse Knull storyline, some of those Spider-Man references and Easter eggs in the Venom: The Last Dance trailer make a little more sense now. And it makes a little more sense why they were depicting this very cosmic, multiverse-looking symbiote hive mind and explaining how that worked back during Venom: Let There Be Carnage. So if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. We'll explain what's going on here. Just seems like they're trying to tie everything together with this giant Knull storyline in a multiverse kind of way. If you have not seen the Spider-Man 4 news recently, the big report is that Marvel and Sony have now changed their original plans for the film. I've talked about this in previous videos. The reason why it took them so long to start making that movie, like they'll start pretty soon, is originally it was supposed to come out next year with like a 4-year break since Spider-Man No Way Home. Apparently, Marvel and Sony fought this big war behind the scenes about what kind of movie it was going to be. Like, Marvel and Kevin Feige wanted the ground-level friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, back to basics kind of movie, Daredevil, Kingpin, some new Sinister Six characters. I'll mention which ones in a second, because we actually did find out which villains they would have used during that version of the movie. Sony wanted to double down on the multiverse of all that because Spider-Man No Way Home made so much money. They wanted to go even bigger, make even more money. Makes sense. They want that Spider-Man cash. They want that sweet, sweet Spider-Man honey. Everything else they've been doing, except for like the Venom movies, haven't really been earning any money for them. They also wanted to use Spider-Man 4 to bring Tom Holland into the Venom universe during that movie at some point, so they could use him in their other Spider-Man spin-off movies like Madam Web, Venom 3, which they've already made now, we'll explain that in a second, or other movies they were planning on making in the future, basically just using Tom Holland in their future movies. I've already done a couple videos on all the Madam Web deleted scenes. Clearly they had a plan to put Tom Holland in that movie that they then changed. Sounds like it has something to do with what their new plans for Knull in the multiverse with Spider-Man 4 are. That whole Marvel vs. Sony fight went on for a couple years. Then Sony films Venom: The Last Dance last year in 2022. When they released the first trailer, we all saw a bunch of strange Spider-Man references. The post-credit scene with the bartender, Chiwetel Ejiofor, who's playing Orwell Taylor from the Venom comics inside the Venom universe during the movie, where the movie's mostly supposed to take place. Like, this is mostly supposed to take place in the Venom universe. They have Rhys Ifans here, looking all weird, who was the Lizard in Amazing Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield movies, just came back for No Way Home. There were reports that this little kid with him was a young version of Peter Parker. This woman was a version of Aunt May, but inside the Venom universe. Naturally, everybody's confused. What the hell are you doing, Sony? What's going on here? Is this another Morbius trailer situation where you're just shooting a whole bunch of Spider-Man Easter eggs at the wall mixed with all the different versions of Spider-Man? If you remember the Morbius trailer, there were Tobey Maguire Easter eggs mixed with Andrew Garfield Easter eggs mixed with Tom Holland Easter eggs. Then when the actual movie came out, they had removed any of those references. Like, it just completely did not make sense. The MCU Vulture crossed over into the Venom universe at the end of the film and talked about Spider-Man specifically with Morbius. During No Way Home, the cracks in the universe showed a bunch of different Spider-Man villains from the multiverse showing up about to cross over into the MCU. Cut to now, it's reported Spider-Man 4 is going to be another multiverse Avengers-level event bigger than Spider-Man No Way Home. So it almost seems like they're walking back a lot of the ending of Spider-Man No Way Home. Like, that seems kind of crazy. Like, wait a minute, you just went through all this trouble to sew up all these problems. Now you're just completely undoing all that stuff. How do they go bigger than Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and their Sinister Six villains showing up for like a big crossover event? Well, it turns out, the way people are talking, that it seems like it involves Null, god of symbiotes, Avengers 5 Doomsday, and what's happening with Avengers 6 Secret Wars. Supposedly, Sony's new plan, which I guess is Marvel's plan too, because they have to agree on what Spider-Man 4 is going to be together, like Marvel and Sony have to come to terms. Marvel can't do anything that it wants with the movie. They're now going to use this delay in when they start Spider-Man 4 when it comes out. It's going to be released between Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, meaning that potentially the multiverse won't exist anymore by the end of Avengers 5. So how do they explain the timeline? Like, does Spider-Man 4 take place on Battleworld, or do they pull an Ant-Man and the Wasp? My assumption is that that's what they will do. Like, they'll move the timeline of Spider-Man 4 so that the end of the movie, like Ant-Man and the Wasp ending, happened just after the snap, but the movie mostly took place before the snap happened. Spider-Man is supposed to be a big character in Avengers 5, so supposedly he will go on that adventure, then we'll have the events of Spider-Man 4, then we'll have Secret Wars with like Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield coming back. So what they'll probably do is they'll have Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom show up during Avengers Doomsday in the MCU, fight all the MCU characters, and they'll do their own version of Time Runs Out. Then there'll be a little timeline trickery with the events of Spider-Man 4 where that goes down, some multiverse elements as the multiverse starts to continually break down. You have to remember the Incursion's already doing that, but Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom is going to have a plot that's similar to that from Doctor Doom in Time Runs Out, where he basically winds up collapsing the rest of the multiverse into a single world called Battleworld with a whole bunch of multiverse characters running around. My assumption is that they'll have like the main fight of Avengers 5 Doomsday against that Robert Downey Jr. Doctor Doom. Then Spider-Man will leave and go off to the events of Spider-Man 4 as you start to see more multiverse characters showing up during that movie. And then at the end of Spider-Man 4, they'll do like a little bit of a time jump where the rest of the multiverse collapses and you wake up in Avengers 6 on Battleworld with a bunch of other multiverse characters. That's the only way to explain how you have your own separate Spider-Man story that feels like a self-contained Spider-Man story, but tie it to the larger Avengers 5 and Avengers 6 storyline. Just playing a little fast and loose with where the timeline of that movie takes place. It was also reported that during the events of Spider-Man 4, Doctor Strange's second spell, erasing everyone's memories of Peter Parker in the MCU, will be destroyed. It's not clear if that's going to be because of what happens during Avengers 5, or if the spell itself will just weaken because of what's happening to the multiverse slowly collapsing. But that's meant to explain during the movie how characters like MJ remember him, the Avengers characters who fought with him will eventually start to remember that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Like I said, the big problem here is that this feels redundant. Like, wait a minute, you went through all this trouble to erase people's memories of Peter Parker. Why are you undoing that so fast? Kind of sounds like Marvel had a completely different plan for Spider-Man, which then changed. So they're like, you know what, we're not going to take him in that direction. We're going to do something different. So we have to walk back some of these changes we made at the end of the movie. But this also allows them to use some of the incursions and the slow collapse of the multiverse during the events of Spider-Man 4 to explain how we get to Null, god of symbiotes, in Venom crossing over with Spider-Man. During the events of Venom: The Last Dance, Null is supposed to emerge as a villain larger than Thanos, like a multiverse-level villain, and Venom will just set that up. They kind of teased this back during the second Venom movie, then Spider-Man No Way Home, with the multiverse symbiote hive mind, basically explaining that Venom, the symbiote species, is a naturally occurring multiverse group of characters connected through the hive mind. That's how this Venom remembered Spider-Man without knowing who Tom Holland was or ever seeing him before. He was accessing the memories of the Venom from Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man universe. During the Venom: The Last Dance trailer, they keep teasing that they're going to have to sacrifice themselves to try and stop Null. The early theory is that in trying to do that, Venom winds up somehow back inside the MCU at the end of the movie. You still have Null very much alive, still trying to conquer the multiverse. Case in point, this is where we get to the events of Venom: Let There Be Carnage. Recently, Tom Hardy posted pictures of himself filming reshoots for that movie. There were separate pictures of those reshoots here, and it looks like they were filming scenes of him in New York City. That could be him inside New York City, the MCU, explaining how he might run into Tom Holland's Spider-Man. There was an entire deleted subplot during Spider-Man No Way Home where Venom was going to be a bigger character. That was what the whole speech during his post-credit scene was all about. I should go to New York City and talk to this Spider-Man guy. Well, what if he did that during Spider-Man 4 at the end of the movie somehow? This would also explain how they rope Spider-Man into the larger Null storyline down the road too. All these recent reports did not confirm whether or not Null is going to be the main villain of Spider-Man 4. They just said one of the villains. Here's the thing about that, you have to remember the way that Marvel and Sony have done these movies in the past, so like use that as a benchmark. I'm not expecting the entire events of Spider-Man 4 to be him and Venom teaming up against Null. Like that just does not feel like they're going to go that hard into Null that fast. Back when Marvel was just doing it as a ground-level, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man movie, reportedly it was going to be Daredevil and Kingpin crossing over. Kingpin was still going to be mayor of New York City during the events of the movie. We'll see that during Daredevil Born Again, sort of setting that up. He'd still be on his mission to get rid of vigilantes, Spider-Man included in that, with Punisher, Daredevil, the other Defenders characters, using street-level villains from the Spider-Man comics against him. Reportedly, the movie was gonna feature the Magia, Mr. Negative, Spencer Smythe, Scorpion, Prowler against Spider-Man. Scorpion and Prowler we saw during Spider-Man Homecoming, so they'd really just be coming back. But now I'm assuming that most of those characters will not appear, like Kingpin was reportedly taken out of the movie. Daredevil might still cross over a little bit, but he wouldn't be nearly as big a character as he would have been when it was still a ground-level movie. Here's the thing though, if Kingpin isn't going to be the main villain of the movie, they haven't really confirmed who the actual main villain will be. It doesn't feel like it's going to be Null, and you have to remember that all Spider-Man movies they've been doing the past several years have always had multiple villains in them. So what I'm hoping is that they don't go full Null as the actual main villain of the movie. They'll find some other main villain and then just include some of these other ground level villains and set up Venom and Null at the very end of the film. It just feels like their plans for Null as this huge Thanos multiverse level villain feels like it would turn into something completely different down the road, like a much bigger event movie on its own, separate from Avengers 5 and Avengers 6. So it feels like they just used the very end of Spider-Man 4 to help set that up. The reported plot for Avengers 5 and Avengers 6 is going to be based more on time runs out and then the Secret Wars from the more recent comics, and there's already so many characters going on during that. Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom will be the main villain of both movies. It just feels like there's too much stuff going on to service an entire Null storyline. So early theory right now, they'll have their next Spider-Man trilogy with Tom Holland, but they'll also have some separate Avengers-level Null event, completely different from like the main MCU Avengers movies. Here's the other thing too, them actually tying Null with the multiverse to the MCU also helps them explain some Easter eggs from previous MCU movies. For instance, Gore the God Butcher using the all black during Thor Love and Thunder. They can now explain how that's possible because Null is a multiverse-level villain. That means one Null for the entire multiverse. In the comics, it's different. Like in the comics, there's a Null in every single universe, but they change the comics and the movies all the time. Everybody post all your reactions in the comments below. How do you actually want them to pull this off long term if they want to use Spider-Man and Venom in a team up against Null at some point? It just sounds like we're going to be seeing some of that set up by the end of Spider-Man 4. Also, really easy way to explain how Venom gets the Spider-Man symbol on his chest. There's a bunch of big stuff coming up. I just posted my big Venom The Last Dance trailer video talking about some of these really weird Easter eggs and what's going on with the Null character, so click here to watch that, and click here for that Deadpool and Wolverine Thor deleted scene and why Thor was crying. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.